Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this evening's live stream. I am joined by your good selves this evening. I don't have a guest coming onto the screen, but so there'll be lots of opportunity to engage with the comments. As ever, lots to talk about. I think next week, will be a week off for the live stream. Then we'll, maybe 2 weeks, we'll see. Then we've got some people lined up coming back after then. But as ever, there's lots been going on. I've got a couple of little videos to show you this evening, as well as a few issues to talk about. So where shall we start? Let's start here. Now, I made a little video last week, towards the end of last week, about non-binary teachers. One non-binary teacher in particular, who's been at 2 primary schools in Scotland. She's currently got a P1 class. And apparently this teacher wants to be called MX, mix, however you say it, called they, them. And apparently they dress quite radically differently on different days of the week, according to whether or not they're feeling more male or female. I mean, to have this being presented to P1 children is just totally, totally wrong. And so the point I made in the video is this just shouldn't be allowed. You should not be able to be a teacher if you're following that sort of lifestyle. I mean, in my view, you've got a problem, basically. If you're wanting to live like that, you're not sure if you're a man or a woman, or you think you're something in between, or swapping and changing, then that's a psychological problem. And the last thing young children need is to be exposed to that and confused by that. So the person like that is not suitable to be a teacher. If in the future they'd resolve this issue in their life, then great, they can go and be a teacher. Same with transgender teachers as well. It just can't happen. It should not happen. In the video, I looked at some of the General Teaching Council of Scotland's criteria, professional standards for being a teacher. And it's saying you have to promote the pupils' health and well-being. You have to be a good role model. You can't do those things when you're modeling a lifestyle of confusion that has lots of harmful outcomes associated with it. So we're taking the bull by the horns with that one. Maybe we'll include that in our policies in the future, but we just don't think it should happen. When this teacher was at Gilmerton Primary School, I heard from parents there who were extremely unhappy about it. And she's now at South Morningside Primary School. And again, I've spoken to parents there who are also extremely unhappy. But the school's line, the school knows what the government wants them to do, and they have to do it. So they trot out the line, and they're totally on the side of equality and diversity. That's what they think this is all about. So yeah, a concern, and the family party would solve it. Right, this was an interesting story in the news. This was a mum who killed her baby in 1998, and the case was unsolved until very recently. It was solved because the lady's son had some scrape with the law, and they took a DNA sample from him, and it was then matched up with their records, and it came up with a close match with this baby that had been found murdered. And so there's no doubt about it that this mum murdered her baby in 1998, but she was given a suspended sentence. It seems a bit strange to me if you've murdered someone to get a suspended sentence. My fear with this case is that it's demonstrating that the judge actually thought, well, he or she was only a little baby. So it was only a little baby. So that's not too big a deal, is it? It's not like it was a toddler or an infant or a teenager. Oh, that would have been much more serious. Since it was just a baby, that's not really such a big deal, is it? Now, we said that the woman's mental health wasn't in a great state. Again, how they can be too sure about that all this time later, I don't know, apart from what she reported herself. Yeah, so that's a concern. There are philosophers who do say, well, they say, it's okay to kill newborn babies. Basically, if you have a baby and change your mind, it's not really a person yet. So you should be able to just leave it to die, as they did in ancient Rome and ancient Greece. If you have a baby you don't want, just leave it out overnight, leave it on the mountainside, and he or she would just die. That's what they did. But I've read, Steven Pinker, who's a very highly respected academic, I think a very good writer. When he wrote about this, he said he thinks postnatal depression could have a purpose. And part of the purpose could be is it helps new mothers to basically kill their own children if they realize they don't really want any more children? I mean, that's just a horrific thought. But he trotted that out. He was saying, oh, it's not what I think, but it was obviously he was wanting to put forward this view in a positive light, which I think is absolutely just abominable. So concern there. Yeah, what was going on in that judge's head? I suspect there was a feeling that not too big a deal. He or she was just a newborn baby. That's just like, it's one step worse than abortion, I suppose. So it's not particularly a big deal. So this woman who murdered her child doesn't need to go to prison. Right, got a little comment here. Right, hello. Think what's happening in Birmingham could happen in Glasgow, which also went bankrupt due to equal pay laws. I'm not sure about the state of Glasgow City Council's finances is dire. There's no doubt about that. And a major cause in that is this equal pay claim, which cost them, I think, going on half of their annual budget a few years ago. Half of the entire annual budget of Glasgow City Council, their annual budget, a few years ago it was about £1.5 billion. That's to run schools, care for the elderly, rubbish collection, the whole lot. £1.5 billion. And they lost about half of that sum to this ridiculous equal pay claim. The same's happened to Birmingham. It left them in a terrible state. The same's going to happen to a lot of businesses, and it will probably happen to other councils as well. And it's all based on a total injustice. It makes no sense whatsoever. The men and the women were paid equally for the same jobs. It's just that women generally chose to do different jobs than men. Women could have chosen to do the same jobs as men, but they didn't. They chose to do different jobs that were paid slightly less. And then 30, 40 years later, a clever lawyer comes along and says, let's sue the council because you weren't paid as much as the people who did the job that you didn't choose to do. I mean, it's utterly, utterly mad. And in the Scottish Parliament, no one will question it. No one will question it. They'll also, how brave these women are. So brave that they've stood up for their rights and got a 5-figure sum, and they're going off on a tour around the world. And the Glasgow City Council is facing bankruptcy. But, these are really brave women, feminists at their best. And words fail me with the whole thing. So who knows what will happen with Glasgow. I mean, Glasgow, they've sold off a lot of their museum buildings, haven't they? Like the Riverside Museum building. Glasgow City Council don't own that anymore. They've sold it to a private investor of some sort, and they're now renting it. So future generations of Glaswegians are going to be paying rent to some rich businessman who now owns that building, instead of having that money to spend on schools or whatever, which they would otherwise have had. So the consequences of this will carry on for generations and generations. And it's a very high price to pay for a wonky feminist ideology being enacted in the legal system. So anyway, yes, that's my thoughts on that issue. Right, let's see what else we've got. It's always fascinating to see the media in Scotland. I mean, they're extremely, extremely biased on lots and lots of issues. And maybe the issue where they're most biased is the pro-life issue. So there's this special advisory group on abortion the Scottish government set up, and they're working away behind the scenes. And it's obvious what they're going to come up with. They're going to recommend decriminalisation of abortion, and which means removing any time limits. And they're going to say that the provision of abortion needs to be expanded and improved. So the media are getting on board with the cause as well, softening up the public, ready for these results. Because apparently in Scotland, there's no one who will perform abortions after 22 weeks. That service isn't provided in Scotland unless it's in a case of a fetal abnormality or whatever. But just for a convenience abortion, if you like, apparently the reason it's not available in Scotland is mainly because they can't get anyone to do it. The doctors say this is such a traumatizing, awful thing to have to do. They can't find people to do it. So at the moment, they go down to England, where they've got BPAS and other charities that are really more like companies who perform abortions, and they've got people, they can pay people enough to persuade them to carry out these procedures. So the STV here is trying to ramp this up to point to this terrible problem that these horrific late-term abortions, it's against the conscience of virtually every doctor in Scotland. So women have to go to England, and they're doing the groundwork for the abortion review. I'd love to know what conversations go on behind the scenes. I mean, this has not been conspiratorial. I mean, this is just obvious that the agenda of the pro-abortion lobby, they're dominating this expert group, and they're also, one way or another, having input to the media. Maybe someone's doing press releases or something. One of the stories in this article for STV, I heard from a doctor who is an expert in this field, and the report from that doctor was the story they told is just not true. I won't go into details because it's secondhand. I don't understand it myself. But the account from the doctor was the story told in this. The example given of a woman who had to go to England, it didn't add up. That wouldn't actually have happened. But that doesn't stop STV. So we'll keep an eye open for that. So maybe over the months to come, we'll see the media doing more of this softening up operation, preparing the public for the final publication from this review group. And it's inevitable which way it's going to go. In fact, they've already said they're only looking at liberalization of abortion law and expansion of abortion services. They're not even going to consider any restrictions or anything that would be a step in the right direction. So they state what they're going to do, and then they invite people to comment. I mean, which is farcical to do that. So we're watching that one closely. Now, what will happen when the review comes out? The SNP is in boring mode. Maybe they'll think we could do without any controversy. That's what they seem to think about everything else. But we'll see. We shall see. There are an awful lot of people in the Scottish Parliament who would just be right on it, saying this is absolutely what we should do. So we'll see how that turns out. All right, what else is happening? I just mentioned the SNP's boring mode. This is a really interesting story developing here. Remember the hate crime legislation that came in 1st of April, whatever now, would that be 2023 now? 1st of April 2023? And so that came up just in, so it's not on Facebook again, the live stream. Okay, don't know what's going on there. I'll look into that. Right, evening, Kirsty. So the hate crime legislation came in, and what it did was it took the existing hate crime legislation and it bundled it all together in one law. So you could have a hate crime based on race or based on religion or based on marital status or based on age or based on all the other sacred protected characteristics, as I call them. So that law came in, and it would obviously normally have included like sex or gender in it. That would have been an obvious thing to do. A gender reassignment was in it, but just sex wasn't in it. And the reason it wasn't in it is because when the law was being proposed, feminist activists basically said, this is wrong. This is totally wrong. How can we possibly have a law that women can commit against men? We want a law that only men can commit against women. So in other words, they want it. So if a man like thumps a woman and says, I hate women, then that would be a hate crime. But if a woman thumps a man and says, I hate men, well, that wouldn't be a hate crime, because this special law would only work one way. Only men could commit it. Only women could be the victims. Now, obviously, that goes against every fundamental basic principle of justice, doesn't it, having a law like that? The example I use, it'd be like having a right. We're going to have a football hooliganism law. If any Celtic fan hits a Rangers fan, that's going to be a crime. Terrible crime, extra harsh punishments. If it's the other way around, we're not bothered about that. It's a one-way law. It's a law to stop Celtic fans hitting Rangers fans. I mean, people would just laugh at that, wouldn't they? They'd say that's so ridiculous to try and have a law that only protects one group of people, can only be committed by one group of people. Now, but that's exactly what the Scottish government said. There was a Nicola Sturgeon Day. So the SNP government, made the Greens as well at the time, and the whole Scottish Parliament was going along with it. They said, okay, we'll do that. We'll leave sex out of the hate crime legislation, and we'll bring in a special law about misogyny. And then we'll make sure it's only men who can commit the crime. It's only women that can be the victims. And they set to work. They set up a working group, and they're proposing a ridiculously extreme law that will criminalize men for, making sort of off-color comments and whatever. Really extreme, very, very concerning law. But like a lot of things with the Scottish government at the moment, then what's happened to it? Where's it gone? It just disappeared. So we're sitting around waiting for it. So come on, bring this law forward. Let's get in the parliament. Let's get it debated. And they just won't. They won't. So why are they not bringing it forward? Part of it, as I say, I think the SNP strategy at the moment is to be boring. They don't want big controversies. They just want to run the country, let Labour mess it up. Conservatives are falling to bits. Okay, reform might come up a bit, but SNP can't do much about that. So they think their best strategy is to be boring and just let things tick over, deteriorating gradually. And they're probably right. It is the best strategy. But why in this one in particular, why didn't they want to bring this law? I think they were scared that if they brought this law forward, they say, this is a law to protect women. What's the first question anyone's going to say? Someone's going to say, what's a woman? And the Scottish government does not want to be talking about that topic at all. They've had their fingers, feet, everything burnt on this topic. So they want to avoid it completely. If this law did come forward, they would have to clarify how it applies to transgender people. Can a woman who calls herself a man commit a misogynistic hate crime? Well, I don't know, the whole thing's nonsense, but these are the sort of questions they would have to think about. Can a man who thinks he's a woman be a victim of a misogynistic hate crime? So if they brought it forward, you could imagine there would be massive controversy about this, and they would be very embarrassed because they would have to answer these questions, and they don't want to answer them. So basically this law, I think, well, I don't think we're going to see it before the next election in any case. But what's happened now, if you're a woman of the view that hate crime legislation is a good thing, then what's happened is the Scottish government has introduced a hate crime law, but it doesn't protect women. It doesn't protect men either, but no one cares about that. It doesn't protect women. So if you're of a feminist bent in Scotland, surely you'll be thinking, hang on, this is totally wrong. How come women are not protected? So if you're a feminist who's a trans-inclusive feminist, you're really unhappy. If you're a trans-exclusive feminist, you're really unhappy as well because women have been left out. So surely there's going to be a groundswell of opinion, of united feminist opinion, of the pro and anti-trans ones, who are going to be demanding of the Scottish government, you need to put this right because we've been left out of these protections. So I think there's an interesting issue brewing here. It hasn't amounted to anything. I mean, there's been this little article in the Daily Express. But I think when people become aware, when women in particular become aware that basically they're being left out and they're not going to be protected under hate crime legislation in any way at all, I think there will be quite a head of steam in the campaign. Family party policy, of course, hate crime legislation, just ditch the lot. It's basically wrong-headed. If you commit a crime, if you go out into the street and punch someone because they're gay, and then you go out the next night and punch an old lady and steal her purse, then I think that's an equal crime. You punch someone, you went out and punched someone. It's not a more serious crime because you did the first one because he was gay, and the old lady because you wanted to steal her money. I mean, that doesn't automatically mean the police should focus on the hitting the gay person. The person who hit the gay person should have a harsher sentence. This is just unfair. Again, it's taken away a fundamental issue of justice in that it should apply equally to all people, protect all people equally, and all people should be punished equally as well. So watch this space. Let's see how this one develops, because I don't think the SNP is going to get away with sweeping this under the carpet necessarily. There could be a big bust up around the corner. And from our point of view, let's hope there is. Let's hope there is, because it'll bring the issue into the public arena, and we want to talk about it. Okay, what have we got? I've got a video to show you here. I'll explain a bit about it first. Now, this is from Craig Houston's channel. Now, and Craig Houston's been on this live stream. I haven't seen Craig for a while, but I know him a little bit. I think I've got a lot of time for him. I agree with a lot of what he says. Don't agree with some of the things he says. Don't agree with some of the ways he might say them. But he's with a rival party now in any case, the SDP. I mean, just to say about the SDP, I'm not sure what the point of that is, because I think people who are on that wavelength will just vote for reform. So I think potentially if he stands as a candidate, he'll maybe split the reform vote very, very slightly, a fraction of a percent. Yeah, I'm not sure what that's all about. Anyway, so Craig Houston had found a video of Humza Yousaf on, it seems like maybe on the day or the day after, just when he'd become an MSP. And I'll play you the video and then we'll have a chat about it. So have a listen to this. Get the sound up nice and loud. Listen carefully.
Entering politics at Holyrood as your MSP.
I recognise this face here.
Oh yeah.
I know, Humza, you're an MSP now, but can you remember the old days?
I was going to say, first and foremost, I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer. I started 10, 12 years ago.
I remember.
It doesn't matter if I'm MSP or MP or Prime Minister or First Minister. First of all, I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer, so I'm always delighted to be here, to be at the stall, to be supporting the important work the guys are doing. So I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer first and foremost. Cradle to grave.
Right, that's it.
So I'm very excited.
Short time after.
Right. What did you hear then? What did you hear? Craig Houston heard Humza Yousaf saying, I'm an Islamic volunteer first. Is that what you heard? No. Because if you listen very well, let's just look at the clues right behind him. Islamic Relief. Humza Yousaf was a volunteer worker with Islamic Relief, a very committed volunteer with the Islamic aid charity called Islamic Relief. I'll talk about those a little bit more in a minute. And I'll play the video again in a minute. As far as I can tell, what Humza Yousaf says quite clearly is, I am an Islamic Relief volunteer. Now, he doesn't put much emphasis on the relief word. It is quite maybe easy to miss it. But as far as I can tell, it's quite clear. That's what he's saying. So I'll play it again. See what you think. Here we go.
Entering politics at Holyrood as your MSP.
I recognise this face here.
Oh yeah.
I know, Humza, you're an MSP now, but can you remember the old days?
I was going to say, first and foremost, I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer. I started 10, 12 years ago.
I remember.
It doesn't matter if I'm MSP or MP or Prime Minister or First Minister. First of all, I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer, so I'm always delighted.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite short when he says relief, but I'm certain that's what he's saying. I am an Islamic Relief volunteer. So why am I saying this? I guess, basically, so Craig put this video out. Quite maybe a sort of sensationalist title, as if Humza Yousaf has said, I'm an Islamic volunteer, which sounds a bit more, I don't know, sinister or whatever, than saying I'm an Islamic Relief volunteer. And I guess the reason I'm showing this is it's just showing how sensationalism and sometimes even things that are going a bit beyond or aren't quite accurate, that's what flies on social media. It's quite frustrating. So basically the story here isn't quite true, but it's growing arms and legs and it's all over the place. Everyone's talking about it. Then you get people commenting on it. Oh, it's really bad. That's what all Muslims are like. And people really jumping on the bandwagon. But he didn't say that. He didn't say that. Now, so as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's frustrating that like sensationalism sometimes sort of a bit conspiracy, not very accurate, as often what people want to watch. But in this case, I said just that story is false. But I'll now go on to tell you what's true about Islamic Relief. When I did my lecture on Humza, the man, the myth, and the Muslim, right, thank you. Second opinion, right, thanks. When I did my lecture, Humza, Man, Myth, and Muslim, I saw that the Islamic Relief was a big part of his life. He was very committed to this charity. He was deeply involved in it over quite a long period of time. So let's have a look about that, shall we? About the actual facts of the matter here. So this is just from my notes from when I gave the lecture. Islamic Relief has long been accused of funding terror. Both Israel and the United Arab Emirates have designated Islamic Relief as a terror financing organization. In 2005, Russian authorities accused Islamic Relief of supporting terrorism in Chechnya. And in 2012, the Swiss banking giant UBS closed down Islamic Relief's accounts and blocked donations coming from its customers to the charity, reportedly over terror financing fears. 4 years later, HSBC did the same. In the Gaza Strip, Islamic Relief funds organizations closely linked to the terrorist organization Hamas. Another key partner for Islamic Relief branches in Gaza is the Gaza Zakat Committee, who work closely with the Hamas government. It's managed by a prominent Hamas preacher. Islamic Relief also maintains financial links with several terrorism-related groups in the Middle East, including the Charitable Society for Social Welfare, which was funded by al-Qaeda terrorist and bin Laden loyalist Abdul Majid al-Zindani. So the truth is what we should be concerned about. So I've brought this up before. I pointed this out, say, in my lecture. Humza Yousaf was heavily involved in this organization. Can you be heavily involved in an organization for, did he say 14 years there, and be totally unaware of any of this? I think it's impossible. Humza Yousaf must have known about these, well, I think they're more than accusations, these facts, these very concerning facts about the charity that goes under the name of Islamic Relief. So if you look at Humza's reaction to the Israel-Gaza situation, okay, as I always say, spectrum of opinions. I'm not particularly take a position on that. But if Humza Yousaf is coming from an organization with close links with Hamas, then that does explain a lot of his behavior and a lot of his statements and his attitude with regard to the issue. And if you're heavily involved in this organization, you would know. You know the culture of that organization. Then when it became an MSP, of course, the Scottish government gave £400,000 to Islamic Relief. That's one of Humza Yousaf's special talents, is diverting taxpayers' money to his pet causes. So one was Islamic Relief. Obviously, it would be through the Humza Yousaf connection. You get Humza Yousaf elected, then you get £400,000 coming towards your charity. The other great one, of course, was the £300,000 that went to the Islamic charity run by Humza Yousaf's mum. It's a while since I've spoken about this. Maybe you haven't heard about this. I'll give you a reminder. This is a charity for Muslim women in Glasgow. It operates from one house, a large stone-built house, but it operates from one house. And this charity applied for a climate change grant, reduce your carbon footprint grant. And they applied. And Humza Yousaf's mum was a director of the charity, I think. She was a director for about 3 years. The two applications while she was a director, the charity received £150,000 each year to reduce its carbon footprint. Okay, the carbon footprint of a little charity operating from one house in Glasgow. It did not have a coal-fired power station in the back garden, just an ordinary house. I mean, that to me, that's corruption. And that's the only explanation of that, is corruption. At the very least, someone's gone along and said, hey, you can apply for this thing. Do you want a bit of advice on filling the forms in? Well, the person gets the form and, oh, wow, yes, we'll put this one on the top of the pile. Or Humza Yousaf just has a word with, well, who knows how it happens? Who knows how it happens? But if you imagine you were running a little charity from one house in Glasgow and you applied for a carbon footprint grant or something, do you think you'd have got the maximum £150,000 2 years running? Do you think you'd have got it? No. Do I think I'd have got it? No. My application would have gone straight in the bin. So I think that's corruption. So let's move on from that. So yeah, interesting story. Truth worse than, well, not fiction, but inaccuracy. Trump and his tariffs. This is an interesting one, isn't it? A very interesting issue. So Trump stood there with this table that allegedly justified how they'd calculated the tariffs that America was going to charge to other countries. Now, it's been very widely reported that these tariffs is quoting for other countries, that other countries allegedly impose on American goods going into the country. They're just not true. They're not true. There's something completely different. They're a sort of balance of trade calculation index, but it's not tariffs. I just find it bizarre that Trump can stand there with this thing talking about tariffs, and every single number he quotes is not true. And he would know that. Advisors would know that. But are we at the stage now that Trump is so confident, basically, okay, mainstream media will pick this to bits and say this is just not true. But Trump just thinks, who cares? Who cares what the mainstream media say? Well, it's on social media that counts. All my followers will think, yeah, this is great. I'm standing up for America, and it will work. I mean, is that the calculus in his mind when he does this? I don't know. Now, tariffs themselves, what do I think about those? Well, I think to a large degree, it's not a moral issue, particularly. I think economists on this issue, as with lots of other issues, they don't seem to have much idea. They'll disagree with each other. They can't really predict what will happen. It's very hard to say. But if you want to protect some vital industries, if you want to secure your supply of steel and energy and food, for example, then okay, these are valid aims for a government, very valid indeed. And also, protecting jobs as well. Possibly you could go down that road. A lot of economists say this is a counterproductive road to go down. It's going to harm your economy in the long term. One of the problems with it is it makes your own industries uncompetitive because they become complacent. So if you're making cars in America and they're not really that good, well, you've got a bit of a buffer now because the cars that are imported get a 25% tariff on them. So it can make homegrown industries complacent and uncompetitive. But the way Trump was presenting this, he was saying that these other countries have been bad to us. They've been exploiting us. And look, it sounded like we were saying they've been stealing money from us. So if you look at Madagascar there, he claims Madagascar puts 93% tariffs on American goods. I mean, that's just absolute rubbish. It's not true. So they're putting a 47% tariff on Madagascar. And that's because Madagascans don't buy much from America. Why do you think that is? Well, the main reason is Madagascans have hardly got any money. Like their annual GDP is about like $900 or something. So Madagascar, very, very poor country. So of course they're not buying iPads and Teslas and whatever else they might buy from America. But for the sake of illustration, Madagascar, they're making their vanilla pods, and companies in America are buying them to make their posh ice cream with it. Now Trump looks at that as though like Madagascar's been stealing money from America because America buys things from Madagascar, but Madagascar doesn't buy things from America. So therefore, Madagascar's been bad to us. They've been cheating us. I mean, that's a really bizarre way of looking at things. Okay, if they want to have solve a balance of payments problem, okay, they need to look at these issues. But the way he was describing it, the language he was using, was just bizarre. And with the EU as well, talking about it, the EU have been really bad to us. But that's ridiculous language use. It's like if you went down to the shop and bought something. Let's say you went down to the newsagents and bought a chocolate bar, and then you come home and say that newsagent, it took my money, and it doesn't buy anything off me. It doesn't come and buy my, tomatoes I grow in my greenhouse. That's a nasty newsagent. Look at the way they're exploiting me. And it just doesn't make any sense at all. But the key thing I want to bring out from this, I say a lot of it, how will it work out? I don't know. Will it be an effective policy for America? I really don't know. Maybe it will in some ways. Maybe it could have been done in a more sensible, graded way. But the key thing I say, let's look at Madagascar again. 47% tariffs. So Madagascar is being hammered. So Madagascar must sell some things to America. Let's say it's vanilla pods, for example. I'm sure there's a lot more complicated than that. But let's say it's vanilla pods. So Madagascar's vanilla pod industry could well be decimated now. There might be some competitor somewhere who can actually make them cheaper than Madagascar will be able to sell them with this 47% tariff. So Madagascar, an incredibly poor country, is going to be absolutely hammered by these tariffs. So Trump has stopped foreign aid. Now, we've heard about the ridiculous aspects of foreign aid, like funding Stonewall and LGBT dance collectives in Uganda or whatever. So you hear about the nonsense, but USAID as well also funds some really important things like helping people have food to eat and medical supplies, this sort of thing. So with Madagascar, as I say, then, so they stopped the aid and also stopping the trade. The trend recently in international development has been, okay, we've got poor countries. We want to help them. What's better than giving them money is actually allowing them to trade with us. If we have free trade with them, that's the best way of these countries being able to lift themselves out of poverty. And that's beneficial for everyone. If their economy grows, they become customers in the world market, so they'll buy things from other countries as well. And it just seems like the right thing to do, to try and help poor countries. Whereas Trump's doing the opposite. He's hammering the poor countries. So it's going to make the poor countries poorer. And I haven't heard the slightest hint that they've even considered this as a factor. Let's look on this table. Where are the highest tariffs? Let's find some whoppers. 36, Nicaragua. 40, Jordan. 93, Madagascar. 55, Tunisia. 54, Kazakhstan. 74, Serbia. 41, Ivory Coast. 95, Laos. 90, Vietnam. 64, Taiwan. Taiwan's wealthy. Japan's wealthy. India, sort of in between. Thailand's not particularly wealthy. Cambodia, very poor country. 49% tariff slapped on. Bangladesh, very poor country. 37% tariff put on. So I think that's the big issue, I'd say here. I think all the rich countries are looking at how it works out for themselves, which is absolutely fair enough. You know, that's the job of their government. They're trying to work out how they can protect their own industries and try and maintain trade, maintain their export markets. But for the poor countries who've really got no leverage either, they are in a very bad way. So I think a lot of people in poor countries, countries that struggle to provide basic education, struggle to provide basic healthcare, maybe struggle to feed the population, to supply enough food for the population, they're going to be in big trouble with this. And I think the consequences are going to be very serious. But my impression is that Trump sort of couldn't care less. It's not even given this the slightest consideration. It's as though within his team, there's not anyone for whom this even crossed their mind as a factor to consider, which are quite concerning. I'll just give you an illustration about tinned pineapples about this. It used to be that countries like Britain had quite high tariffs against processed food coming from, say, Africa. So again, this is a very simple illustration of the point. But imagine you're in an African country and you're growing pineapples, say. And what you would like to do is you'd like to harvest your pineapples. You'd like to have a factory there in Africa. You've got cheap labor. You can have a factory and you can chop your pineapples up, stuff them in tins, put a label on, put them on a ship, sail them to Britain and sell tinned pineapples for, I don't know, £1.50 or whatever, however much tinned pineapples cost. And you could really make a lot of money out of that. That could really help lift the country out of poverty. But what Western countries and Britain tended to do in the past is they'd have tariffs. They would prevent that sort of import because they want the pineapple tinning factory to be in Britain. Because then you import the pineapple and you pay, say, 20p for the pineapple. And then the company that puts it in a tin and puts a label on it, they're the ones that really make a lot of money out of it. So if you have tariffs like that to prevent processing of products in poor countries, you're going to tend to keep those countries poor. Whereas if you allow free trade, then they'll put the pineapples in a tin in Africa, send it here, and they'll make a lot more money, and that will help the economy develop, and say people will be lifted out of poverty, and that was generally seen as a positive thing. So these tariffs were generally removed in the last few years to allow more free trade. So the trade not aid philosophy has really gained a lot of ground, and I think it's a very positive thing. But Trump has totally reversed that. Trump is going for no aid, no trade with the poorest country, particularly targeting the poorest countries. Like Madagascar, I mean, how much of an influence on the American economy does Madagascar have? I mean, minuscule. It would be the tiny fraction of 0.001% or something. And yet is willing to absolutely hammer them, really harm the economy, the developing economy of Madagascar, just on the basis of some sort of simplistic, made-up calculation thing that they've used here. So I'm not impressed with that. Now, Elon Musk's been mouthing off about this. They've obviously he's fallen out with the American government, basically. But I think we see with Musk, because Tesla's going to be hit by this quite hard, because their components come from all over the world, and then they put them together in America. I mean, some of the Teslas are made in other countries completely. They're assembled in other countries. So his business is very badly affected by that. So what does he do? He's like completely mouthing off, hurling insults at Trump's advisor. And I just think with Musk, that's the sort of person he is. He will look at a couple of tweets and then fire off insults. It's really difficult to work with someone like that. That's like immaturity. But I think in the Trump government, maybe it's the way public discussions going in general, it's just becoming more common for people to be like that, just to mouth off and be really offensive, and that's just what you do. Now, say what you like about Keir Starmer as Prime Minister, he doesn't do that. He's quite restrained. You might say he's too restrained, but he wouldn't do that sort of thing. And I think when you've got people who are like volatile like that and ready to mouth off and hurl insults and fall out publicly, then you're going to have a volatile and unstable administration. So what's going to happen within the Trump administration, I don't know. Right, we've got some comments here. Let's see what people are saying here. Let's go. So let's I agree with most of what you said. Now I wonder if you understand how. I know what he's trying to do. I mean, what Trump's thinking is like 25% tariff on cars. So let's say Land Rover, who sell a lot of cars in America, he wants them to think, right, that's a big tariff. We need to start making our cars in America. So we'll open a factory in America. We'll make our cars there. We've avoided the tariff. We can still make our money selling cars there, but there'll be Americans employed making them. That's what he wants to happen. I think one of the big problems with that, if you imagine you're the CEO of Jaguar Land Rover, you just say, all right, okay, if we knew this 25% tariff was going to be in place for the next 50 years, we would go and build a factory in America. But this is Trump. Who knows how long? He might change his mind next week. Maybe Trump will be out after 4 years. Maybe, who knows, will come in. Maybe the Republican or a Democrat might come in and just completely change this. So we've built our factory there, and then it goes completely wrong for them. So I'm not sure you can expect people to go and invest billions of dollars developing industrial capacity in America on the basis that Trump's introduced these tariffs at the moment, but there's no guarantee what's going to happen in the future. So I understand what he's trying to do. I said that the two reasons are bringing jobs home and sorting out balance of payments. Basically, that's the two things he's trying to do. Wants the companies to move to America, which again is fine. I mean, that's a valid reason. Lots of countries have tariffs on lots of things, and that's part of the reason why they have them. So I think tariffs are not particularly a moral issue on their own. California, Texas, and a few other states have a bigger GDP than most countries. Yes. Yeah. I'm sure a lot bigger than Madagascar as well, for a start. China. Yep. I would be very happy to see a lot of restrictions on Chinese goods. I think China is basically bad. I know people think, oh, that's really simplistic. It's not goodies and baddies. Well, it sort of is. I mean, China is bad. It's not like absolutely oppressive, but it's very authoritarian, and a lot of people are mistreated seriously in China, and I think they've got aggressive international ambitions as well. So yeah, slap the tariffs on, absolutely. But what could happen in response to Trump's tariffs is you could have a large section of the rest of the world coming to a grand free trade agreement. That would really leave America in a pickle if that happened. I'm not sure it would ever happen on any large scale. Britain had tariffs because it is an island and needs to protect its economy. Pineapples, an exotic good that's imported only because we can't grow them. Way to go, you have no clue. No, hang on a minute. Right, let's just stop a minute, shall we? I wasn't talking about pineapples. I was talking about where they're processed. And the tariffs that Britain used to impose, as I understand, used to impose on this sort of thing, was to make sure that the processing took place in Britain rather than in an African country. So the main place where the profits made out of it will be in Britain. But a general move, which I think was sort of philanthropic, well, not philanthropic, it was paternalistic maybe, that they were saying we can help these poorer countries by allowing them to process the goods in their own country and then export the processed goods to us, and therefore have more make more profit out of it, basically, which is something that I approve of. So I think you might have misunderstood my point there. So moving on. Jaguar just go bankrupt after his trans car advert. Well, yeah, you could certainly say that, and I hope they don't. It would be a real shame. But I hope whoever agreed to doing that, I hope all those people are cleared out pretty soon so they can get back on track and make some good cars. So, yeah, the EU is protectionist. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I think some of the people criticizing Trump, it's as though this is like a unique thing he's doing. But I think most countries have tariffs of some sort or another for various reasons. So, yeah. Anyway, right, that was interesting. Let's move on. What else has been going on? Oh, yeah, I think this was the largest newspaper article ever about the Scottish Family Party. It was sort of about us. It was about our protests at abortion clinics when they're closed. So this was in Scotland on Sunday, not last Sunday, the Sunday before. So there's the headline. Anti-abortion protests that defy law are still happening inside buffer zones across Scotland. Why? So the headline basically says that we're breaking the law, and we're not. I actually spoke to someone from the Scotsman today. I complained about something. I'll show you in a minute. So I had a chat with him on the phone. And I said to him, that's maybe heading towards being libelous. It's saying we're criminals when we're not. So maybe took that on board. Let's look at some other bits within this report. It's difficult to know how some of the other anti-abortion groups, like the Scottish Family Party, are funded. Now, the Scotland on Sunday journalist emailed me during the week before, and she said, how are you funded? I think I maybe said this last week, did I? So I replied saying, we're funded by a variety of shady American extremist organizations, in addition to direct funding from the Russian government. Then I said, only kidding. The truth is, we're just funded by our members and donors, donations from our supporters in Scotland and the rest of the UK. We've never had a donation from any organization or any business, and it's illegal to take donations from abroad in any case, so we don't get any from there. So I've told the woman, the journalist, I've told her where our funding comes from, and then she writes the article and puts that in it. Which, again, I was saying to the man at the Scotsman today, that's really unfair. It's like saying to say, Scottish Family Party, it's all a bit shady. We've got our suspicions. No one can quite understand where that money comes from. But, well, it's a mystery. Maybe the truth will come out one day. That's the impression it gives. Whereas actually our finances are the most boring thing in the world because they come from fantastic supporters, donors, such as your good selves. And that's the end of the story. But they try and make it sound like, there's something a bit sinister. Something else in news reports as well. They will never put a decent photograph of me in. Now, you may say there's no such thing as a decent photograph of me. If they're going to put a photograph of me, they'll find one that's really old and grainy. Because basically, they don't want to humanize us. They don't want to have a picture of me or other people in the family party just looking like normal people. They don't want that. They want it as though, we just managed to catch a glimpse of these shadowy people going around their shady business. So, they will not publish good photographs. Obviously, the BBC has a couple of times, but the newspapers don't. Just notice that whenever you see a thing about the family party in a newspaper. This is something else from this article. Have a read of that. The wording of the law, and then it's got that the Abortion Services Act prevents anti-abortion protests from taking place within 200 meters of any clinic carrying out abortions in Scotland. That's not wording from the law. That's not a quote from the law. That's a quote from another Scotsman article. So, I mean, real blunder for the journalist. So I said, you need to correct that. You need to publish some sort of correction because it's just wrong. Anyway, but that's the media for you. I haven't got I haven't got a picture of the whole article. The whole article had the central picture was of our 18,000 lights display in Castlegate and Aberdeen. It was a really good picture. Ewan Morris at the front speaking. So that's the sort of coverage we're looking for. They quoted quite a lot from our pro-life policies. and they included quite a bit from me as well. So within it, we got a lot of good lines there. Our crowdfunder. Remember, the last couple of weeks I've maybe put up our crowdfunder to replace our stolen placards. We needed about £80 to replace them. I think we've raised 310 or something, £311. So that was fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone who chipped in. I've spent most of it already on some new placards with some new wording on them, and we will be taking those into action on Saturday, the 12th of April, end of this week. Sandyford Clinic in Glasgow, 3 till 4 p.m. I don't think we're going to have any speeches. We're not going to take a PA system. I would guess there'll be a counter-protest of some description. If there's a dozen people counter-protesting in Edinburgh, in Glasgow, I think there's quite likely to be a lot more. But that's just the general rule. So we'll see what happens there. The reason we're doing this is we're keeping pushing this issue that so many people, including Gillian Mackay, who pushed the law through the Parliament, really believes that it's illegal to have a demonstration within a buffer zone when a clinic's closed, but it clearly isn't. So we're going to keep doing it, and Gillian Mackay will keep taking the bait. She'll get more and more irate. She'll put more and more pressure on Police Scotland to arrest us, and basically she's making a fool of herself. So we'll keep doing it, and we'll see where this ends up. And maybe it will end up with them modifying the law in the Parliament. They'll add the Scottish Family Party amendment to the Act to stop it. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. But in the meantime, what we're achieving is we're getting big photographs of our big placards in newspapers, and that's great. They can write what they like in the article, but their photograph is normally got pictures of our great big placards, and that's getting the pro-life message over. So that's good. New placards, that's how we're going to defeat the New World Order. Right, okay, that's not the most sensible comment, to be honest, because you can look at any situation and anything anyone does in any sort of struggle or campaign and say, do you really think that's going to make the difference? I mean, you could say to a soldier loading his rifle before he gets out of his landing craft on D-Day, you could say, do you really think that rifle is going to defeat Hitler, do you? Do you really think that's going to make the difference? You're a bit stupid, aren't you? That wouldn't be the most sensible thing to say, would it? So I wasn't exactly saying that this is going to be like the thing that turns the tide in Scotland. So, yeah, I'm not sure that was a very sensible comment. Right, let's, so come along if you can, 3 till 4. The weather forecast it's fairly good, actually. Yeah, I think it's dry. Saturday afternoon would be great to see you there. Who knows what's going to happen? Good to see you there. Right. Here's a quick story from Aberdeen. I mean, it's quite wild, actually. So guaranteed interview scheme. So if you're applying for a job with Aberdeen City Council, you get special treatment if you're a special person. And the special treatment you get is you're guaranteed an interview. So if I apply for a job, they could say, nah, we don't want you. No, you're not suitable. Bye-bye, no interview. Try again somewhere else. But they guarantee an interview. In other words, they give an advantage to certain special people. So disabled people, young people who've been in care, people aged 16 to 24, live in Aberdeen City or have been to an Aberdeen City Council school. Okay, so if you went to an independent school, if you went to one of the little Christian schools in Aberdeen, well, you can forget it. You don't get a guaranteed interview. But if you went to a state school, then you get a guaranteed interview. But the real one is this last one here. Are new Scots aged 16 to 24 and applying for any apprenticeships. So special privileged access to new Scots. And they define new Scots. New Scots are defined as refugees and asylum seekers who are in Scottish communities that include those who've been granted refugee status. Okay. I don't agree with giving people preferential treatment in applications for jobs because it just breeds resentment. If you're not a special person and you get knocked back and you hear that the special people automatically get through the first stage, it just breeds resentment. And it's also fundamentally unfair. So I'm against this whole scheme. But people who've been granted refugee status, okay, fine. I mean, there are at least people who should validly be applying for jobs, okay, or another form of humanitarian protection. People seeking asylum, right? So people seeking asylum are allowed to work? I'm not sure. Those who've been refused asylum, in other words, fake asylum seekers, in other words, illegal immigrants, and those whose application has been refused but who remain in Scotland, you'd assume illegally. So in other words, they're giving special treatment to illegal immigrants, because everyone knows most people who come to Britain, they come from France, for example, they come over, claim asylum, they're actually just trying to immigrate, they're not actually refugees, and yeah, it's the story they tell. And if you get turned down, then as far as the illegal decision has been made, you are an illegal immigrant from that point. You tried to come in on the basis of telling a story that you needed refugee status, but it's been decreed, it's been decided that that wasn't true. And so at that point, you're an illegal immigrant and you shouldn't be here. You need to go back again. I mean, people shouldn't be here in any case as asylum seekers, because you're supposed to claim asylum in the first country you get to. But Aberdeen City Council is giving special priority to criminals for getting jobs, to illegal immigrants. Which it's just, the mind boggles how they get the head around that. Now, if someone's been granted refugee status, I think that's a totally different thing. If someone's a genuine refugee, then I hope they do get a job. I hope that they build a life here and things go really well, and best wishes to them. But if you're an illegal immigrant, then the idea that illegal immigrants being given special privileges is, well, it's just wrong. And it's just going to stir up problems. Even if you think, oh, yes, the poor old illegal immigrants, I really take pity on them. They're in a very difficult situation. They must have been really desperate to earn more money if they've made the effort to come here. I would like them to be given special treatment. Even if you believe that, you still got to acknowledge that this is going to be massively divisive and it's going to cause tensions within society. And I think that is increasingly what's happening. I'll leave that because we're running out of time. I'll do this quickly. Events coming up, 2 of those have already happened. We had a good meeting in Kirkcaldy and Dundee was great last night. As well, Sanderwood Clinic, 12th of April, 3 till 4 p.m. 7th of May, we've got a meeting in Stirling. And we've also got a meeting in Falkirk coming up on the 2nd of June. And then through May and June, we're going to have lots of meetings. In fact, if you fancy having a meeting near to where you are, and you could get a couple of people together, send us an email and we'll probably come, especially if it's not too far. So we'll go down into the borders sometime. We'll go over to Ayrshire, maybe sort of Clyde Bank. And yeah, we'll be around, particularly the Central Belt, Perth, probably. We'll have quite a few meetings in the next couple of months. So, right, I said I was going to talk about the Talmud, didn't I? I promised someone. Is the person I promised to talk about the Talmud? Or are they watching tonight? I don't think they are. I don't think I've seen the name. I'll save that for next week. But I'll show you one more thing. Right, I'll save that to next week as well. I'll show you a little video to finish off. This is from GB News. And they're arguing about the buffer zone issue, about the woman down in Poole who'd been arrested, was convicted, in fact, on Friday. They were talking about that case. And the presenter just came out and said, I was going to an abortion clinic to have an abortion. There was a pro-life group there, and I changed my mind because they were there. And I'm glad they're there because they had a positive influence on me, which was really brilliant. Because normally with these things, it's the pro-life people who are, wheeling out someone. Here's someone, we want you to listen to their story, which is good. But I think it's a lot more powerful if it's someone who's already there and said, oh, yeah, this happened to me. Not someone who's specially been brought along to tell their story, but someone who was already there. So I think it was very powerful. I'm not sure she intended to say it. It just seemed to come out in the course of conversation. Anyway, here it is.
It helped me because I didn't have the abortion I was going to have because somebody was out there. But I don't think that was bad. They weren't in my face, and I'm glad that I was influenced by that.
How about that then? She was glad she was influenced by it. And that's the key word in the law. You're not allowed to influence. And she was saying she's glad she was influenced. Now, I assume, you can't be absolutely certain about this, but one would assume that she's now got a son or daughter who wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for that group. I mean, that's the what one would assume has been the outcome of that. So that was great that she said that. Right, let's have a last look at the comments. And then, right, Robert, okay, that's a shame. I go on Saturday. We don't need to be like a vast array. I don't know if we're 10 or 20 or whatever, that will be. We might have more than that. I mean, when we did the lights in Glasgow, we had about 40 people there. So let's see. You look up Stop Hill Hospital's ground owners and the no prayer zone around that church. Right, Stop Hill Hospital. Do they do abortions? I'm not familiar with that one. If you want to send over more information, I'm not familiar with that as a case. What was it you I was going to talk about that? It was, wasn't it? Right, I've run out of time about the Talmud, but I've got some notes ready and I've got my image there. So I guarantee I'm going to do it next week. Now, yeah, sorry about that. But at least this week I've talked about the things in the title. My normal mistake is to miss out one of the things in the title of the live stream. But we've done Humza the Islamic volunteer. We've done Trump versus poor countries. We've done Aberdeen privileges, illegal immigrants. So, Mr. Vida, if you wouldn't mind waiting until next week. Next week? No, it won't be next week. Till the next live stream. And I will talk about the Talmud then. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your comments. And hopefully see some of you on Saturday. And bye for now. Good night.